Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This is another video in my RHCSA practice series where I'm not necessarily trying to give authoritative information, but it's more of a chance for me to go over these objectives as I prepare for my own RHCSA exam and kind of self-gauge whether or not I feel like I know the topic or if I need to go back and do a bit more study on it. Of course, I do try to give as accurate information as possible. And as always with any of my videos, feel free to leave comments, ask questions. I'll answer as best I can. Or if I do get something wrong, by all means, comment about that. So I learn, and those of who are watching the video also get the accurate information. Before I dive in, I do want to remind you, like the video if you enjoy it, and click subscribe and ring the bell when you do so you can know when new content comes out. So the topic for this video is going to be manage layered storage, which is a part of the create and configure file systems. And this, along with the configure disk compression objective, annoy me a little bit because everything else, it's kind of obvious, what tool you're going to be using to do the things, such as if you have create and delete logical volumes is one. Well, logical volumes tells you probably logical volume manager is the thing that you're going to be using. But these two, I had to do a little bit of research to figure out what's the actual tool that's being used, and on that, I basically Google searched managed layer storage in Red Hat, and I eventually found the documentation for Stratus, which this is the tool that you're supposed to be using for the managed layered storage. And I confirmed that by posting on a couple of things and just asking, hey, what do you folks, what does this mean, managed layered storage? And they all said Stratus. And one other note, as you're preparing for your RHCSA exam, I encourage you to use a variety of sources of information. My main study, self-study, came with using the linuxacademy.com tutorials. I have a subscription to Linux Academy, and they're good. As of the making of this video, which this is August 9th, 2020, I believe the courses that they have are still RHCSA for RHEL 7. There's one, they have two courses with that. One of the courses has some updated material for RHEL 8, but if memory serves correct, neither of them cover Stratus, so that's a little annoying. Stratus isn't too terribly difficult to figure out, but just know that if you're preparing on your own, you need to use more than one resource. Basically, what I did was that's been my main resource of information. As I'm doing my final reviews, I'm literally going through the posted objectives from Red Hat to see if I have gaps, and then also use the I think it's Van Sook, I think that's how you say his name. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but his book that's pretty highly lauded, even though the Kindle version I found a lot of typos in, which is a little annoying. But I've used a combination of those in just kind of my own research, reading Red Hat documentation for training. So, your mileage may vary with all that, but that's what has seemed effective for me. So getting into it, managed layered storage, we're using Stratus for that. Personally, I don't see much of a point to Stratus right now other than some of its snapshotting capabilities, and perhaps there'll be more to it as the technology matures and such, but I personally don't see much of an advantage over using LVM and VDO for things. But I can also see where it can be kind of an easy mode as far as making file systems, but making file systems to me doesn't really seem that difficult. Anyway, so what we need for Stratus, the Stratus D service needs to be running, which I believe is already installed on this systemctl status Stratus D, or maybe just Stratus. Nope. All right, so we need to install it. Cool. When I did my video on VDO stuff was already there. So let me go ahead and sudo into, I just use the command. So what we need to install is Stratus D, as well as Stratus CLI. So that way you have the tools to be able to manage it. Go ahead and do -y for that. Feed it my password. That shouldn't take too terribly long. Of course, helps if I don't fat finger my password. Yep, just 5 megabytes. And we're going to go ahead and start and enable it. So sudo systemctl enable Stratus d -- now. And so that's a one-liner that will both start the service as well as set it to enable. All right, so we're ready to go as far as Stratus. And I'm not sure if best practice is doing this just on block devices themselves or doing it with partitions. For this, I'm just going to use a block device, but that's something that I'll need to look up myself. I'm curious if you have a good bit of experience with Stratus, post in the comments what the best practice is concerned as far as block device, or like, make your block device, make a partition that's the entirety of the block device and use that. So to work with Stratus, and this is one little annoyance with Stratus, is that the command seem a little more cryptic compared to some of the other things I've worked with. So we're going to do Stratus. We're going to be creating first a pool of storage to use. All right, and for our Stratus create pool, we're going to be creating test pool, and the device, I believe I just need to give the device name. So dev, we'll do VDB. I think that's all I need. Nope, I'm wrong. So, it's pool create. See, this is where it can be a little annoying, but it's kind of the beauty of this. On the actual exam, this is what you can look forward to. So let's do Stratus pool create. Let's see if tab completion will give us anything here. Nope. I believe we were going to have to give it a name and VDB. Let's see if it likes that better. I can't help but laugh. Of course, I need to. Now, here's a curious thing. This is supposed to be able to run in user space, or what I've read about it. Yet here I am, a user in the wheel group, and I can't do this. So, like pretty much everything I foresee doing on this exam, I'm going to be doing this as root. So, let's try again. Stratus pool create test pool dev VDB. All right, so now we can do Stratus pool list, and so we have a pool of 5 gigabytes of storage, 4 gigabytes of physical, or rather the test pool, where you, if I'm reading this correctly, we have 5 gigs of storage basically available for this, which makes sense because the block device is 5 gigs large. So from here, we don't really have anything that we're working with. What we need to do is create a file system. Now, all file systems that are made with Stratus are going to be XFS. I don't know if that's going to change in the future or not, but that's just the way it is. So we want to make our file system. That will be Stratus file system. I think you can do FS as well. But we're going to be creating that from the test pool, and we're going to call this test file system 1. I believe that is correct. We're about to find out. All right, no errors. Let's do Stratus file system list, and we have our file system. And notice UUID and device Stratus test pool test file system 1. UUID is important, and the reason is if you're doing this persistently, which remember everything in RHCSA we have to make it survive reboots, you do have to use UUID, and this is I'm pretty sure per Red Hat's documentation, you do have to use UUID in XCFS tab to make this be persistent. Now if I were to do block ID, we're going to find our Stratus, then FS, and notice type XFS. So I didn't tell it what type of file system to use. It's just going to happen with Stratus. And let me make a directory here, make dir mount xf, we'll call it Stratus. And I can mount this if I wish, so mount Stratus. Pretty sure this is what I will do. I'm so used to just using FS tab, just doing the mount command alone. Sometimes is not confusing to me, but I just don't know the exact result to expect. And we're going to do mount Stratus. All right, there it is. Now notice the size. It says I have a terabyte. Well, I assure you that this block VDB only has 5 gigs. So what's going on here? This Stratus is its own thing as far as storage, and even if you were to read the Red Hat documentation, it basically tells you you can't use tools like DF to monitor your storage with this. You're going to have to use Stratus's own tools. So we can do Stratus block, I think it's block dev or block device. Maybe it's block device. Nope, block dev. And that tells us what our pool is. And then if we were to do the Stratus file system, or FS, that gives us how much is used out of our file system. So again, I personally don't see much of the advantage of Stratus outside of Snapshots, which I'll show you about. But just know that if you're managing this, you're not going to be able to use good old DH and some of our other tools that we typically use for this. So we have our file system, we have it mounted. What we're going to do is make this mount be persistent. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So we're going to go into etcfs tab. And I'm going to add a line here, use my little trick of getting my block ID. And there's our Stratus and all of its data. We want this UUID. I'm sure VI masters are probably cringing because there's, I'm sure, a more efficient way of doing that. We're mounting it on MNT Stratus. The file system for Stratus, remember, is always XFS. And we're going to do defaults. We do need to add one thing, and that is xsystemd.requires stratusd.service. Just like if you're dealing with VDO, if this service is not running and it tries to mount the file system, you're going to have a bad day. It's not going to work, and it'll take boot forever to happen, and just, no good all around. And then, often you can use mount-a to test whether or not your persistent stuff is going to work. For things like Stratus and VDO, I have found that not to always be accurate, because if you have just been building your storage, then the necessary services are already running. So of course, from Mount's perspective, hey, this is already up. I'm good to go. But a reboot is truly going to do the test. So let's try this. Reboot, and let's see what happens. It's that famous last words in IT, right? Let's see what happens. Part of me is kicking myself for a moment because I should have turned off the quiet stuff so I can see everything that's happening at the time of boot, but I think this is going to work pretty well and it not take forever to boot. At least it looks like it is. Maybe. There we go. We'll see if our file system is there, which it should be. I have no reason to think that it would not. Yep, and there's our Stratus mounted to mount Stratus. All right, so manage layered storage, there's one other thing that I want to demonstrate to you, and that is the usage of snapshots. And really this is kind of a practice for me, because the snapshot thing, again, with syntax with this command, I have to do it a few times to kind of get it back in my head. But we're going to create a file. Let's do echo Stratus test file. We're going to put that mnt Stratus and Stratus test.txt. Oh, I probably need to be root for that. So let's go ahead and go back to sudo, if I can spell. And we'll try this again. Alright, and let's cat this out, just to make sure that we're there. Alright, so we have our test file. Now, to take a snapshot, and from what I understand with snapshots, these are independent of one another. You don't have this tree of dependencies for snapshots and data. I'm not 100% sure on that. If you're a master of Stratus, again, feel free to comment, but I'm fairly sure what I remember from Red Hat documentation is, you know, if the original file system's blown away, it doesn't mess with the snapshot, which kind of makes sense. So what we want to do is take a snapshot of our file system. So to do that, we'll have, first of all, let me list our file system name, test file system 1. So we're going to do Stratus file system, if I spell Stratus right, and we're going to snapshot. Pretty sure that's how that works. We need to give it the pool name, which is test pool. Need to give it the file system name. See, that's the thing with this. And this is one of my little annoyances with Stratus, is that you have to kind of remember the order of stuff. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the file system that we're snapshotting first. So that's test file system 1. And then the name of the snapshot that we want to make. So we're going to call this test snap. Pretty sure that's how that's going to work. Let's see what happens here. Again, famous last words in IT. Let's see what happens. All right, didn't get an error. All right, so now we have two file systems. We have our snapshot, and then we have the test file system 1. So test file system 1 is currently being used, and we have our little snapshot here. So I'm sure there is a method other than what I'm going to do for restoring a snapshot, and if that is the case, feel free to put it in the comments, because there's almost always more than one way of doing things when solving a problem in IT. So I would love to see other ideas of doing this with Stratus. But let's clear this here, and we're going to remove this file. So mount Stratus, call it stratus test.txt. Yep, we're going to remove that. So it is gone. So to be able to work with the snapshot, first we need to unmount the current file system. Umount mnt stratus. All right. Then we need to mount the snapshot in its place. Now the curious thing is, what I'm wanting to do is to do this permanently, and that's going to require a new UUID. So one thing, just for my own peace of mind, I will sometimes rename the snapshot. I'll destroy the first Stratus file system and then rename the snapshot to be it. But what I want to try this time is simply change the UUID. So I'm going to do block ID, and which one is our snapshot? All right, so that's not going to give me the information I want. Let's do Stratus. This list, I think, is what I want. Yep. So The UUID for the test snap is the one that's A7. So this is that UUID. So I'm going to copy that. And what I want to do, the RHCSA tab, is replace the UUID. Now I believe this is all that I need, but kind of testing on the fly here. A lot of times these videos I'll do kind of a dry run, get my thoughts together in my head before I make the video, but this we're just doing live so to speak. You're probably watching, I'm sure you're watching this after the fact. So I'm curious to see if Mount-A works. Alright, and let's ls-mnt Stratus. There's our file. And we're going to reboot just to see if that works, which I'm sure that it will if Mount-A worked, because I know that we have the parameters right in that CFS tab because this successfully mounted upon reboot the last time. And we'll see here. So again, with Stratus, that's I don't see a whole lot of use in it outside of the snapshot. The snapshot stuff looks pretty cool. I know you can do some snapshotting with LVM. I've never done that before, but I would imagine it's probably not too difficult to do and can yield similar results. I guess that'll be something to do in my lab sometime once I'm done with the RHCSA exam, is play with LVM snapshots. So let's check out our ls-mnt Stratus. Yep, and cat. All right, so we have made we have now put the snapshot in place. So I guess as a little bit of cleanup, what we can do, Stratus file system list, and we're going to Stratus Stratis file system. I believe it's remove. Nope. I don't want to rename it. I want to remove it. Maybe it's delete or destroy. Or let's do this. Destroy. That's it. So Stratus file system destroy. Pool is test pool. And the file system that I want to destroy is test file system. No, not test pool. Test file system 1. And of course I need to do sudo for that. Alright, and let's look at file system list. That's gone, and then if we need to, we can rename that. You saw the option come up. We can rename the snapshot file system to the original file system if that makes life a little bit easier for management. So I think that fairly well covers the manage layered storage objective within create and configure file systems. Thanks a lot for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed it, make sure you click like. Also subscribe to the channel. Feel free to leave comments as you want, and share with others if you think they would benefit from it. And I'll see you the next time.